Hey everybody, Daniel here. So today I thought we'd have a look at a real seminal piece of funk R&B guitar playing from the late 60s. It's a group called The Meters, and the tune is called Cissy Strut, and I'm sure all of you have probably heard that riff before, if not the original record, but it's been used in films and whatnot as well over the years. So the reason I chose this is because it has a nice range of different techniques which can form the basis of your funk and R&B guitar playing. So we'll break those down a little bit in a sec. And we'll also spend a bit of time talking about how to get the kind of tone that we're after for this style of playing. So without further ado, let us begin. Alright, so let's look at the notes first, and then we'll talk about the techniques as we go. I'm going to split this riff into 3 sections, starting with this. Okay, so we've got a bit of a swing going on here, a couple of little inflections that make this sound a little bit more interesting than simply playing an arpeggio. So we're starting off on the 5th fret on the G, and we're going to be playing that with our 3rd finger, and we're sort of imagining that we're in this box, pentatonic box type of a shape. We're going from that 5th fret to a 3rd fret with the index finger. From there we're going to go to the D string, 5th fret, 3rd finger again, followed by the A string, 6th fret with the little finger, and finally the 3rd fret A string with your index finger, which brings us down to the root note. So all together, 5th fret G, 3rd fret G, 5th fret D, 6th fret A, 3rd fret A. So very important that you maintain that position. You don't want to have too much lateral movement here. We want to keep everything nice and economical, and not have to move when unnecessary. All right. So as I said, that doesn't really sound like the song. So in order to get that sound, first of all, we need to be cognizant of the timing. So you can hear there's a bit of a swing on those notes. So you might want to just practice that first with all downstrokes if you want. And now this is where it gets really interesting. So we're going to add a bit of left hand inflection here. So from the 5th fret to the 3rd fret, those first 2 notes, instead of playing them both with a pick, I pull off to the 3rd fret. Now I'm not 100% sure if that's the original way of doing it, but that's just how I find sounds funky. So we're going to pull off from the 5th to the 3rd. Then we're going to come up to that D string. That's just going to be a regular note. Now when we get to the 6th fret on the A, instead of just resolving straight down to the C note here, we're actually going to do a tiny little bend on that note. So you can hear I'm just pulling down on the string ever so slightly to get that microtonal shift in pitch before we resolve down to that 3rd fret. So all together, pull off, little bend, resolution. Great. So on to the second part of this riff. This is nice and straightforward. We're going down to the 3rd fret on the E string, playing that twice. 5th fret on the E string, 3rd fret on the A string, back to the 5th fret on the E string, and then 3rd fret on the A string one more time. So all together. Like this. Again, resolving it to that 3rd fret. Now with this particular part, I'm a little bit more conscious of what my picking hand is doing. So all of my first few notes are going to be downstrokes. That's going to be an upstroke on the A string, downstroke on the E again, and upstroke on the A again. So every note in that part on the E string is a downstroke, and every note on the A string is an upstroke. And you can hear that when you play that A with an upstroke, you get more of a snap rather than that's a little bit exaggerated, but you get the point. So again, that snappiness is really part of the sound that we're going for. We want to have dynamics within the notes that we're playing so that it's a bit more rhythmic and feels a bit more syncopated. So that's that part. And then lastly, we've got a couple of small chord shapes here. These are going to occur on the G, B and E strings. And we're going to be starting off on the 6th fret. You're going to be barring the E and B strings with your index finger, and then playing the G on the 7th fret with your middle finger, playing that twice. Notice how the first time I strummed that, I let it ring. The second strum, I'm muting it with my picking hand, so I'm doing like a karate chop across the strings to stop those strings from ringing out. Because if I let it go, it sounds a bit too jingle jangle folky for me, so we want to have the rest in there. Then we're moving down to like a D chord shape. So if you know your D chord, also a bit out of tune, D chord down at the 2nd fret, we're just going to move that up to the 5th fret. So we have 5th fret on the E, middle finger. I like to set next the index finger on the G, 5th fret, and then 3rd finger on the 6th fret in the middle. And both of those are going to be short and sharp with the karate chop mute. So those first two kind of flow into each other a bit more. The second two are more staccato, separated, like that. So you put it all together. You've got your pull off, bend, snap, chords. Job done. Excellent. So we know the notes. Now we need to make it sound like the real deal. And in order to do that, we need to be conscious of what sort of guitar tone that we're trying to pursue here and what's appropriate for the style. So we'll start with the sort of amp sounds you might go for. I'm using like a Fender Twin model, which is a very clean sound, lots of headroom. Don't really want breakup, maybe a tiny bit, but certainly not a dual rectifier. And I'm running a bit of compression into the front of that. So a compressor is just going to take your very loudest sounds and bring them down in volume, and your very quietest sounds up in volume, so that everything stays a little bit more even. So that's good, because when we're switching between our single note runs to our stabby chords, we're not getting too much of a volume jump from one technique to another. And particularly when we're playing in a band environment, we want all of those notes to cut through the mix regardless of what sort of technique we're using. So yeah, compression is our friend, in moderation of course. We've got a bit of a reverb tail on there as well, so just typical what you'd have on an amp. Just dial it into generally around 3, so 9 o'clock, just for a little bit of a echo on the end there. Gives you a bit of dimension, three-dimensionality in the sound, and is more comfortable too, as far as giving yourself a little bit of air to work with. And when it comes to the guitar, you'll notice that I'm using a guitar with single coil pickups. So this is in a Stratocaster configuration. So 3 single coils, and the reason for this is because single coils are going to give you much more of a spanky, trebly sort of sound, and more dynamics too. A humbucker would tend to be a little bit too fat for this style, in my opinion. And so I've got a 5-way switch on this guitar. Some of these guitars will have 3 ways, but in the 5-way it's good because you can get these in-between positions. So for this song I'm actually using the neck pickup in conjunction with the middle pickup, and it gives you a bit of a quacky sound, which is synonymous with this style. If I were to go onto the neck pickup, sounds okay, but it's a little bit too warm. If I go to the bridge pickup, I find it can get a little bit too spiky in the upper range. So yeah, I like these in between parts here. But experiment with whatever setup you've got at home, and I'm sure there's plenty of other ways that you can achieve similar tones, even if you don't have this kind of exact setup with the pickups and whatnot. Thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed that lesson on Cissy Strut by The Meters. If you'd like the transcriptions for that song, feel free to send me an email, which is in the description below, and I'll flick through the PDFs for you. If you'd like to inquire about online guitar lessons through Zoom, I also offer those. So again, the email is your port of call for those. And finally, I'd really appreciate it if you could like this video and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And any suggestions that you have for future videos, feel free to leave in the comments. I'll see you next week.